sit on yonder bar stool and look to heaven. Let us pray. I'll fry it every single day and let the chips fall where they may. Oh, let this song just go away. I'll relish any time you'll stay with me, my dear.
Jeff, you like a good riddle?
Love one.
All right. Try this. What technology does the military use to track airplanes and other flying objects?
Radar.
Very good. Who was the assistant to Colonel Potter on MASH?
Radar.
Very good. What is another name for a microwave oven? A what range?
Radar.
All right. What sort of extrasensory perception enables somebody to tell that a person likes another person of the same gender?
Why? What have you heard?
Turn that radio dial.
What you talking about, Wood?
It's time for the most Gen X podcast there is.
Real tomato ketchup? Not even close, bud.
You found it.
Never been so happy in my whole life.
It's just Jeff and the dazzlingly uncool.
Don't mess with the bull, young man. You'll get the horns.
And now, it's just Jeff.
What's going on, Leadfoot?
Leadfoot? That's a name I haven't heard in years. I used to know an Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yes.
I thought you were talking like this for, like when you were growing up.
I didn't have
and
a
Mom
list.
was like, we're going to fix that, Wacky. No, you know the reason I called you Leadfoot is I have no idea why I was thinking about this the other day, but I do remember you maybe getting a ticket or two in your younger days.
Yeah, I did once have the name Leadfoot, just like Ben once had the name Obi-Wan.
Oh, I see.
But I haven't heard that in years. So yeah, I did have a bit of a Leadfoot, and I wasn't great about getting away with it because I got quite a few tickets.
Yeah.
And at one point, I think I could have taught defensive driving just because the deal was like you could take defensive driving to get a ticket off your record, right?
I remember that.
Well, within a span of about 6 months, I got a ticket from the Conroe Police Department, from the Conroe Sheriff's Department, and from the DPS. And apparently their records didn't really talk to one another. So
at least not within that first month, right?
Well, I mean,
eventually
they all
probably
were like,
did.
well, but I got to take defensive driving, and I took it 3 times. And I got all 3 of those tickets removed from my record, allegedly. But they didn't look and say, well, it says here you just had one taken off your record, so we can't do that. But anyway, for the kids listening, because I know we have a lot of kids listening to this, and I don't want them to think that I'm condoning speeding. I don't want them to think that it's cool or anything. And if they do speed, by golly, have a Fuzzbuster, right?
Oh, no, you didn't. You did not just go there.
A Fuzzbuster. You remember radar detectors?
I had a strange feeling you were going to be going to radar detectors, but you threw me for a wild loop with Fuzzbuster. That was awesome.
Fuzzbuster. It was called the Fuzzbuster. I think there was one called the Escort, as I remember.
You know what's funny is they don't have. Do they even have them these days?
You know what? I don't know anybody that has one. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, that is something that is just kind of purely an 80s, I think, phenomenon. I mean,
but
I don't know of anybody that has them anymore. Well, I actually recently I was asking myself this very question.
Right.
And I thought to myself, I don't think they make them anymore. Maybe they're illegal. Maybe they've become obsolete. maybe they don't work anymore. I don't know, but I don't think they make them anymore. I mean, I don't see them like at Best Buy or any place where I don't really see them advertised on Amazon. I don't really go to like car stereo stores. I don't even know if that's where you'd buy them. I honestly, it seems like, yeah, it seems like that's where they were sold. But I went out and kind of Googled it, and you can still buy them. They're not cheap.
Would they still
and also,
work?
Well, I was reading something about kind of about them and why they sort of had their heyday, and somebody's impression of why they're not really useful anymore. And this was kind of interesting. It's because so many cars now have like lane change assist and kind of auto driving features and auto cruise control, and they're sending out signals very similar to radar that will just cause your radar detector to just go off constantly. And you just have all these false alarms. And so somebody was just saying, it's not even worth it, in driving on a modern road, because any new nice car that you drive by is going to set it off. And the other thing that they mentioned is that if you use Waze, the app, Waze, do you ever use that?
I've never heard of it, but
it's kind of a directions, like a driving directions app, but it's kind of also got a social feature on it where, like, when you're on it, you can see like little things of other Waze drivers where they are, and people will say like, beware, there's a car on the side of the road, or there's a dead deer in the road, or be careful, there's a police car up here. And he was just saying, with that, it's probably just as accurate and updated in real time, and then you don't have to worry about, having all those false alarms and just having that thing going off constantly and driving you crazy. But kind of interesting, huh?
Well, and like you said, it seemed like it picked up on the radar guns, right?
Well, it picked up the radar guns, right. And so it's only good, like if there's a police officer there and he's, firing off his radar gun at cars in front of you, you're going to pick that up. But if you're by yourself, and he just kind of points and shoots, your radar detector is not going to do you any good. And I did kind of read there are radar jammers where you can like send out a signal that will jam radar, but that actually is a felony with a very high fine, because like you're not allowed.
That's just a federal offense.
That's a federal offense. You can't send out a signal. That's like an FCC kind of violation. But anyway, so there's radar jamming versus radar detection, and then apparently now there's like some kind of light-based thing that they use, and there are some things that'll send out kind of like scrambled light signals so that it kind of baffles the. But
the only way of detecting police cars that was 100% effective was the light flash, right? If you're going one way and a guy's come their way and he flashes your lights, that means, look, over that hill you're about to go over.
That's right.
Take a look to your left. There's a fuzz. Yeah.
And then somebody had to just totally screw that up by making the urban legend that if you flashed back at somebody that flashed their lights at you, that was like a gang initiation thing. They were going to turn around and kill you for their right?
Well, it seems to me like it was always during the day that you do the flashlights. Otherwise you're flashing your brights, and
that's true.
But going back to when you call it a Fuzzbuster, and it just made me chuckle so much. I think now, when I think of Fuzzbusters, I think that's probably like a Manscaped studio.
No kidding, man.
Hey, I got a new membership to that male salon down there, because they have these male salons now that, they're like hardwood floors. They give you beer when you go in. They trim beards and stuff. It's. I guess it's manscaping. But wouldn't that be a great one if it was called Fuzzbusters?
That would be. That might be your $1 million idea right there. I spend so much time fuzzbusting. We've talked about this before, but dealing with ear hair and eyebrows and errant nose hairs, it's just
It wasn't really the fuzz I think of when I think of manscaping. I'm thinking about, can you put on like a number 4? I wanted it to look like a flat top down there.
Give me a fade.
Yeah, there's nothing fuzzy about eyebrows. Those things are brittle. The ones you have to pick are brittle.
Well, I mean, you're not doing other fuzz busting, are you? I mean,
that when I say manscaping, that's what I think of, because everyone's always done their eyebrows and their nose hairs and their ears, but I mean, I think that's part of it.
You didn't have to quite as much before you hit middle age. It didn't.
No,
grow
but I mean, I imagine there probably
rate.
weren't a bunch of. I mean, I doubt our grandfathers or fathers were like, let me see what this will do down here. No, it just seems like nowadays it's like chic.
They didn't even bother with their eyebrows or ear hair.
Not Andy Rooney.
Sure. No, I mean they just let it. They just let it grow. I mean, I bet if we even mentioned if we could have a day back to go and visit with our grandpas, and we brought that up, they would just be like, "What in the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah.
I hope. Can I go back under the ground right now? It's
exactly.
I don't even want to be here.
I mean, I don't want to say they take so much time to groom down there, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of them straighten it. Huh? Quite possibly braid it.
Would it be a straightening iron, or would it be like a chemical straightener?
I don't know, man. I mean, either one.
What about a crimper? Or teasing it? Well, you think big 80s hair will ever come back? You actually kind of like tease it to get it to kind of stand up?
But let me tell you, that used to be my go-to in high school. I'd say, ask the girls, hey, would you tease me down there? And of course, they'd try to get me in trouble. And I was like, I was talking about hair products.
So you mean when somebody would say that girl's a tease, that's what it meant?
Might be. Well,
wow.
God, see, now that kind of, yeah.
Huh. You know something else? Like, we've gotten off track here, but I was thinking about, like, radar detectors and stuff, and I'm kind of surprised. I would have thought that like the police would have come up with ways to like tell that you've got a radar detector or jam your radar detector or whatever, because things have developed so much along those lines. I remember, we grew up in Conroe, which was a great town, great place to grow up, but there wasn't a lot to do on the weekends. And
right.
I can remember driving around with our buddy Brad, who we've mentioned several times on this podcast, but we would just, to kill some time on a Friday or Saturday night, we would drive around and just take the garage door opener and just see if we could open other garages. And we could. I mean, you'd drive around a neighborhood and you could probably open like 4 or 5 garage doors with your garage door opener.
No kidding.
Because I guess it was just there weren't that many codes, and the if it was like
universal
so if you each had a Craftsman, or you each had I don't know what the Genie or something like that. I mean, there was a good chance that out of the number of possible codes that you might hit one. In fact, I went down this rabbit hole when I told you I was kind of reading about the radar detectors. I was thinking, why was that? And apparently back in those days, there was about a 1 in 12 chance that if you just drove and you had a Genie clicker and somebody had a Genie garage door opener in their house and you clicked it, you could open their garage door. And I mean, I don't know why that was fun or anything, but it was something to do. It probably freaked some.
Well, I mean, that is kind of fun.
Some
I'd
people
have
out,
done it.
Your garage door suddenly goes up. But nowadays,
what?
Well,
I was going to say it wouldn't be a good way to go in and kind of 5-finger discount their garage, because another thing, those garage doors were not quiet.
No, that's true.
I mean, if you hit that Genie and some guy's laying in bed and all of a sudden they hear,
I know.
that
was a pretty good impression of a garage door opener.
Thank you. You want to hear my impression of an airport hangar?
No. But
I have no idea. I was trying to think of something so random with the same impression. And I guess an airport hangar and a garage are kind of the same.
But anyway,
I should have said something
now you got like these rolling codes and millions of different, so you can't really do that. So I mean, I guess it's still not a 0% chance that if you were a kid that was bored and you're driving around and you might get somebody's garage door opener. But the thing is, like, why would kids today be that bored? There is no excuse.
No kidding.
So I'm guessing that there's probably not a lot of kids out there seeing if they can open up garage doors.
Well, do you remember a few weeks back we talked about New Braunfels?
I was just thinking about that when we were talking about radar detectors. And 5-finger discounts, and
I've got a story about a radar detector that some people may or may not know, and I think I'm willing to come clean.
Really? I think that, I think that would be a good story, a good topic for the next segment. You don't want to miss this.
We'll be back right after this.
All right, I'm going to take us back to, must have been 84, 85. We were...
Well, let me preface this, if I could. And I'll give you all the details, dates, time of year, whatever you need to know. But I first just want to say that there will be no names mentioned to protect the innocent, because the only name you'll know is mine, and I was not innocent. There were a couple of other cats involved that were not innocent, and one of the reasons that I'm telling this story about me and not them, but that's irrelevant. We're not trying to bring him any bad blood. Huh? We're not
mentioning victim names? No, I agree. Yeah.
We're not mentioning any names. I mean, no names.
Other than the Crim.
Other than the Crim. And that is not why I had that name, by the way.
You had it before that, didn't you?
I don't think I did. I think I gave myself, first of all, you're talking about the name The Criminal. And I gave myself, that was a Dreyfall can't stand that nickname because it was self-proclaimed. And he's like, you cannot have a self-proclaimed nickname.
T-Bone.
T-Bone. Gotta like that T-Bone. We'll get Dreyfall on here to talk about that one time. But anyway. So I was at military school at the time, so it would have been 1985 or 86.
Okay.
Oh. Or it could have been that summer before I went. Anyway.
Yeah, I think it was that summer because we had gone on a little family trip to New Braunfels. That's where we kind of like teased this to bring up a topic from our initial segment.
Yes,
we did a lot of teasing. So we teased that during one of those trips when our grandparents were there and we were allowed to have a beer. That's what we were talking about. We kind of remembered that. And you remembered that something else happened, that there was a phone call received that set in progress a series of events.
So a phone call was received by one of my best friends at the time and still to this day. And again, I'm not going to mention any names only because I don't want any name associated with this because everyone can put two and two together.
Yeah.
First, I just want to apologize to Mom and Dad, but you know the story.
Yeah.
And one of the things about this podcast that I always like to do, or really anyone, is, I tell some of these stories about my past. And we really haven't gotten into many, but they happened. I don't do this anymore, so I put the humor on them, right? So I try to put the humor on it. So
there's a statute of limitations for, in terms of the law. But there's no
I'm not even talking about the law. I'm not even talking about... No
statute of limitations on humor.
That's what I'm talking about, Willis.
Yeah.
So I get a phone call from this gentleman, and he
First
basically
of all, let me just make the point to our young listeners again that it took some work to make a phone call and to get a phone call, right? I don't even know how you exactly...
We were in San Marcos.
I don't even know how you got a phone call. But anyway, you got a phone call.
Should we tell the story prior to the phone call?
Maybe so. Because I keep derailing you, but now that I think back to 84, 85, I mean, did they call your secretary? And
I did have a secretary at the time because it's going to sound like I had quite the operation going, is what it's going to sound like, and I really didn't.
It is.
So
no, you didn't.
One summer evening, I was swimming with a couple of guys that I don't even know if I've talked to since this day. They weren't hoodlums. They weren't bad guys. I think there were about 4 or 5 of us there, okay?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the conversation of radar detectors came up, right? And
as would often happen in the 80s.
As would often happen. And I didn't have one, and then I got to thinking, well, maybe I want one. A couple of fellas talked about, well, let's go steal one, okay? And I went with them. And like I said, they weren't bad guys either. I don't know why they were doing this, why I was doing this, but we literally went to hotel parking lots. Remember there was a Holiday Inn up there by, it's by that Exxon station that we would always go to. There was a Holiday, we like literally drove through that looking for people that might have radar detectors. I mean, I don't know if we were going to, I don't think we would have done anything had the door not been open.
Yeah.
So finally we found one that was open, and it was someone we knew, and it was really kind of a three-tiered process. You had the driver, the one that opened the door, and the one that grabbed. Well, I was the one that grabbed, which I guess put me as the main accomplice. So in other words, if the other two...
Oh, you weren't the accomplice.
No, I wasn't the accomplice. So in other words, if the other two start getting roughed up, they're going to name names for a lesser sentence, right?
Yeah, that's right.
They were looking for the ringleader, and I was no more the ringleader.
I only abetted.
That's right. Anyway, long story short, or short story long, which I usually have a tendency to do. Let me just keep going to get it to that point. So I took this radar detector and flipped it. Right, I flipped it because it was a good radar detector. Okay, I mean it was top of the line because it was from someone who had access to top of the line. And I traded this to someone else for a cheap radar detector, and I think like $60. So I'm still detecting the fuzz, and I got $60 in my pocket, right?
What are you, like Tony Montana? Like
I don't
laundering?
know. I don't know. So move forward to the phone call, okay?
Yeah.
And it's our buddy, and he's like, hey, listen, so-and-so knows you did it. You know, the guy you took it from knows. And I'm like, well, what do you mean they know? Now, here's why I was able to play dumb. It happened in the summer, but by the time they all started realizing that someone might have done it, I'm at military school. And I'm like, how can I physically do that? I mean, I'm 3 hours away. I mean, I'm good, but I'm not that good, right?
Right.
So... But this guy's just like, dude, I'm telling you, it's just, I think you've been sold. The other guys that might have been involved have thrown you under the bus.
Man.
And so the rest of the trip, I just have this gullet, you know, that I just had this stone in my stomach. Just,
right.
Hey, Jeff, you feeling okay? I'm great. I'm great. Fast forward some more, and I'm out. With this buddy that called me. We're just kind of hanging around. I'm not gonna. And the guy who I did actually take it from pulls up and confronts me. And I've got to say, this kid who was older. He was older. I mean, he was older than me. He would have been graduated or whatever. He probably could have kicked my butt.
Yeah.
But dude, he took the high road, and he just I'm like, dude, there's no way I could have done it. I don't live here. Seal, all fingers point to you. You're going to have to tell me where these fingers are coming from. I just don't get it. Seal, all fingers are pointing to you. Never threatens to kick my butt. He just keeps saying, it's you. I'm like, whatever. So then about this time, I don't know if Dad gets home, but all of a sudden, somehow they get involved. This guy's like, I'm not going to try. I don't know if I'm putting words into people's mouth. If I am, I'm apologizing. But, you know, even Mom and Dad were like, well, there's no way. He was at military school. I don't understand how this could have happened. Just all fingers point to them, yada, yada, yada. All of a sudden, the story starts coming out. And I think the person who I sold the radar detector to for a cheap radar detector and $60 might have also been one who was getting some heat and sold me, right? Threw my name down the river. So at this point, the guy's like, well, why don't we go to his house and ask him? And Mom and Dad are like, let's just go. Let's go. And I'm still denying it. Right? And I just know, this is not going to end up good for the J-Man, right? And my buddy who called me and who was there for me and has been there for me for so many different times, I think at this point he's probably just saying to me quietly, Seal, man, you need to say something. I'm like, I can't. So we all go over to this guy's house, and my buddy was there too, and the guy who I did take it from, and Mom and Dad. And all of a sudden, pieces just start coming together, right? And the guy who I sold the radar detector to, he wasn't selling my name out. He wasn't saying, come on, dude, you did it. He was just trying to say, look, I don't know much about this. And we're probably going to get phone calls from Mom telling me how it was, but this is how I remember it. I think one of them, either the guy who I took it from or Mom or Dad, said, if we go take a lie detector test, will you drop this? Yes, I will. Absolutely, I will.
Listen to you.
I didn't say it.
This is like a Law and Order episode with like really boring white kids.
Yeah, right? On a $260, so-and-so stole a radar detector worth $260. There was a bank robbed down the street. Screw it. We're going after this. So all of a sudden, the lie detector's thrown out. And the guy agrees, if he passes it, fine.
Now, this is even more like, this is harder to believe than you getting a phone call. Where were you going to get a lie detector?
I don't know. I guess just go to the police and say, can we get a lie detector? I don't know if it was Mom or if it was Dad that I said, hey, I need to talk to you real quick. I did it.
They were sticking up for you, and now they're
oh my God, they were sticking up for me.
Yeah.
And
that's not good.
The guy who I took it from, like I said, he handled it like a champ. He handled it like a champ. And so I forget exactly what happened, but at some point he asked the guy how much the radar detector was worth. Let's just say $250, because back then they were expensive. Okay.
Yeah.
And Dad wrote a check for $250. We gave the other guy his cheap one back. Dad's holding the expensive one. And the guy's like, I appreciate this. Now I just need my radar detector back. And Dad was like, I just bought that radar detector. So you're not going to get that back. But I can guarantee you it's not going to be used. So in other words, he was like, look, I understand. You've been compensated. Okay. But I'm not going to get it. So in other words, that was the summer that we painted the house. And I was not allowed to. I painted a lot of that house. If there was a group of kids that came up and said, "Hey, there's a big baseball game happening, on 5 Augusta," you and Toby were grabbing your mitts, and I was grabbing a roller.
Well, now, I mean, I painted a lot of that house with you, but I was getting paid.
Yes, and you could go if someone said, "Hey, you want to go do something?"
You were paying.
let me just say, I don't think there's a chance that I could have I want to put myself in mom and dad's position, and I want to put myself in the guy who I took it from position. I don't think I could have handled myself any better than either of them did. And when I had to finally admit it, it was the worst feeling of my life and the best feeling of my life, because it was over. I didn't have to live with it anymore. I mean, I lived with that. I mean, I took a radar detector, dude. I stole a radar detector.
Yeah.
I lived with that.
Yeah.
And it's the one
For
time.
all our listeners, that is not part of Jeff's personality that you would have ever suspected that he did something like that. But
Well, because people know I'm not good with technology, right? I steal candy. I steal candy. I've got some stories about candy.
Detector, you're like, wait, that doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up. If I'm not mistaken, too, I think Dad asked me at one point, "Were you drunk?" And I said no, and he said, "That's the one time I wish you would have said yes, I was drunk."
Oh man, yeah. Well, there are a lot of lessons to be learned in this story. It's a good story. It's got a good arc to it, good ending. I don't think I ever really. You probably told me, but I don't think I ever knew like how the victim in this like really played it cool. Had really kind of took the upper hand there, and he could have been he could have approached it much differently and have been justified.
Rightfully so, right?
Yeah.
Rightfully so. But I mean, you cannot have a more solid defense than "I don't even live here."
Yeah, you had a good alibi.
He just said, "Look, all fingers point," and then it just snowballed. And I think the number one lesson that I learned in this is Mom drank too much that weekend at New Braunfels.
Yeah, that was the infraction.
It was.
That one beer that she had, that was.
I think she had more than one beer.
Went wrong.
That's where it all went wrong.
The lesson to be learned here, kids, is don't speed. Mm-hmm. If you do, have a radar detector, but buy your own.
Buy your own.
Right?
Buy your own.
So we can dole out some very useful advice here.
I will tell you, I am going to dole out a little serious, useful advice here. Everyone's going to get their fingers into something. Not stealing, but everyone's going to do something that they hope they don't get caught for, right? And you're going to do something sometime that goes beyond the norm, like the radar detector. And you will feel, you're going to carry that with you. And even though you get caught, and it's going to be horrible that you get caught, dude, the best thing that happened to me was getting caught at the end of that story. Otherwise, it would have always haunted me, man. I did it. It's over. The reason I don't have a problem telling this story is, what am I going to do? Lie? I did it. I'm not telling people, listen, don't know the person you steal from. No. Just, hey.
There you go.
It was a good ride. And I'm hoping that this season, now we've got the F- story behind me. We've got the radar detector story behind me. Now we've just skimmed the surface. We can start getting into the meat and potatoes.
There you go.
Right?
I don't have any stories, so we'll just hear the rest of yours.
I've never been in jail.
It's time for closing thoughts with Jeff. And now, here's Jeff.
We've always said the purpose of this podcast was to bring 70s and 80s nostalgia, not only to fellow Gen Xers, but show the millennials what they missed out on, although I would assume some details are not up their alley. But another way we hope to stir up memories is to share our own personal stories from the greatest era of all. And you heard today, as well as in past episodes, Just Jeff was anything but a saint. However, I like telling these stories and hope we do so in a way that makes you laugh. I've only hit the tip of the iceberg and hope y'all want to hear more. Let us know, and we'll let the good times roll. Until next time, don't think for a second Rocky gets out of this scot-free.
Thank you for listening to the Just Jeff and the Dazzlingly Uncool podcast. Check back every Thursday for new episodes. If there's a topic you think we should discuss on the podcast, leave us a comment or a message and we'll do our best to get to it. Check us out on Facebook and join our group called Growing Up 70s and 80s Texas Style. Didn't grow up in the 70s or the 80s? No problem. Didn't grow up in Texas? No problem. We still want you in the group and as part of the discussion. Hey, do you think you yourself may be dazzlingly uncool? Well, if you found your way to our podcast, chances are pretty good, or at least that you will be one day. Wear that title with pride. To find out more, check out www.rockysealmusic.com.
Good